think we can all be effective leaders, and it's something that we can do over time with practice.
Welcome to the Leadership Initiative, where we explore the art and science of leadership through thought-provoking conversations with experts, thought leaders, and change makers. Whether you're a seasoned leader or just starting out on your leadership journey, this podcast is designed to provide you with the tools and inspiration you need to lead with purpose and make a meaningful difference.
In today's episode, Ben Tepper sits down with George C. Banks. Banks is chair and professor in the Department of Management at UNC Charlotte's Belk College of Business. He's also an affiliate faculty member of the Organizational Science PhD program, the School of Data Science, and Industrial Organizational Psychology Master's program. Their discussion covers Banks' experience with consulting and academic research with a focus on meta-analysis. They also discuss the use of virtual reality and artificial intelligence to instruct MBA and undergraduate students on leadership skills, specifically charisma. So let's get to it.
So I have a lot of titles because I have a hard time saying no to things. So, I'll let you decide, which ones for the target audience are kind of the most relevant. So I'm currently serving as chair of a Department of Management. Again, not a job a lot of other people were tripping over themselves to get.
Nothing has changed in that respect.
Yeah. Yeah. So I also serve as co-chair of the new Center for Leadership Science. So that center's been around for about a year.
Okay.
And then I serve as editor-in-chief of the Leadership Quarterly. And then I also, currently serve as the chair of the board of directors for Center for Open Science, which is something that I do a lot of research in. So I think those would probably be the most relevant kind of background pieces.
Yeah, that's perfect. Where did you come from? You did your degree. I think I know the answer, but you go ahead. And
Sure. So I did my PhD. It was in management, which was at Virginia Commonwealth University. So I was there at the time Karma was there. So Peg and Larry Williams were there. Mike McDaniel and Sue O, who, former Frank Schmidt students. So I got trained on meta-analysis. Kind of like every student, you kind of learn the methods of your advisor. And then I was at Longwood University, which is a small teaching university in I guess Southwest, kind of Central Virginia, which was really nice. So prior to going into academics, I got to do consulting work. So I got a taste of that. I got to work at a teaching university, got a taste of that, and got, now a, research oriented position, which I really like. They're all great jobs. I like them all. So I always tell the students, they're all great career choices. It's just about finding the one that's right for you.
You did talk a little bit about research methods, that kind of thing, your interest there. And I do understand what you're saying. It's hard not to develop the same interests as your own advisor. In my case, I got interested in leadership ideas because my advisor was he did work in that area. What got you interested in leadership as a thing to research? And I don't know if you actually teach in that specific area too.
Sure. So I initially was doing consulting work in Connecticut. I used to do kind of work with like small time businesses, so 250 people or less. And I worked primarily on HR compliance, which I found interesting, but at the same time, it was discouraging because it was kind of like people were just trying to avoid getting sued, right?
Yeah.
And getting into trouble. And so I wanted to go and do some consulting work that was more proactive. And so that's when I moved back to DC, where I'm from originally, and I started doing consulting work with the Office of Personnel Management. And so OPM is really interested in making sure that our federal agencies have a leadership pipeline. So Missile Defense Agency, Patent and Trade Office, Forest Service, that you're basically training essentially the next generation of leaders to be able to take over the agencies. So I found that to be very proactive, right, in terms of what I was interested in. But I also thought that, this wasn't that it was lacking in science, but it could be augmented more so with scientific research. And so that's what drew me to the PhD program. When I got into my PhD program, I lost interest in leadership because I felt like everybody was doing it. And there was just so many leadership scholars and so much work out there. And it wasn't that I wasn't interested in it anymore, but I kind of got scared off of it just because I was just like, everyone's doing this. I want to do something else. So it was really through doing meta-analysis that, my advisors taught me that I started meta-analyzing. You have a hammer, you go around looking for things to bang. And, I started meta-analyzing the leadership literature. And so that was kind of my into that field. And when you do a review paper, whether it's a meta-analysis or another type, you develop expertise in that area and you start to kind of understand where the gaps are, where the opportunities are. So that was kind of my foray back into leadership because I had done these big review pieces, felt like I had a really good grasp of the literature, and felt suddenly now empowered to go and do, some primary study research. And then I kind of understood where I'm like, yes, everyone's doing leadership. There's lots of leadership scholars out there, but I actually think I can make a contribution now.
You know, well, I know what you mean. There's um, a lot of people doing leadership research. Not all of it is terrific. And so one of the things that draws me to your own work is that you write very provocative pieces about problems in the leadership area. And I don't know if you'll take this as a compliment or not. You kind of remind me of my own advisor in that respect.
Yes. Yeah.
That's how he, that's how he made his bones back in the day. His name was Chet Shrisheim. He's kind of close to
Yep.
retirement now,
Yep.
but the very first doctoral seminar I took, a lot of the readings were his, and I couldn't believe how rough he was on other leadership scholars at the time. But it also kind of
I
got
think
me.
there's a balance. I think that I was just talking to one of my students this morning about it. There's times to write a provocative piece, and then there's times to um, be a little bit more positive in the sense that you could kind of deliver the same message different ways. And I think sometimes you get people's attention, obviously, with provocative pieces, but then sometimes that could make people less receptive potentially to the ideas. And so I think there's a time and place for the different approaches. Same
Yeah,
message, but kind of how you frame it.
yeah. Okay. So let me ask you some questions that and even as I ask these, it's going to occur to you, well, yeah, this is the kind of thing you would put on a blog because it would evoke reader interest. It may not be something you think too much about, but and we're kind of experimenting. So over time, I'm expecting this might change. But well, first of all, I didn't really clarify this. Do you teach leadership at? I mean, you work with doctoral students on it. You teach it at the MBA or undergraduate level?
So we have a kind of a strange half semester format that we also offer MBA students. So next week, I'm actually starting to teach ethical leadership to the MBA students.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's the next thing on my to-do list. And you can imagine for MBA students, because of business and conflicts of interest and things like that, and the effects for society of business, that MBAs are a great group to work with. I also teach with our doctorate in business administration students, which are different from the PhDs. So they do residencies and their degree program is 3 years. But what I love about, my PhD students are great. I mean, they're kind of the typical age, 22 years old to, late 20s. The DBA students are wonderful as a complement because a lot of them are in leadership positions in organizations. Like they work for like Wells Fargo, Bank of America, the health organizations here. And so when I teach them leadership, the conversations are really different because we're still talking about the science, but you're talking to people who've kind of been in these jobs and have done these roles. And so it's fun to kind of break it down their experiences.
Yeah. Um, is there a particular topic or concept that you really like talking about in the leadership class? Like a personal favorite?
Gosh, it's a tough question. I have so many favorites. It's kind of hard to pick.
I'll tell
I
you
will.
what.
I'll say
the
my go ahead.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be the thing, because I mean, I think if I was asked this question, I don't think I'd be able to answer it either. There's a lot of things. So yeah, just pick something and tell me what you
My
like.
my yeah,
Yeah.
my students' favorite is probably charisma. Um,
Okay.
so I mean that's kind of something that's, you know, quite popular in the academic literature, but I think remains popular in the kind of practitioner space just because we all kind of understand, you know, as we're watching the election, here in the US, we're watching the politicians, try to woo voters and be charismatic and catchy and things like that. And it's something that I think is typically hard for people to define and articulate. We also can talk about kind of the dark side of charisma, right? So you could use your charisma, but not necessarily to promote, you know, good intentions for stakeholders. And so that's kind of when students also then enjoy talking about ethical leadership and how that needs to be a complement in terms of kind of balancing consideration for different types of stakeholder groups. So yeah, those types of conversations.
That's
Um, I,
good.
I will, I will say for me, one of the things that drives me a lot is the gender and leadership conversation, just because I look at society and I mean, you hear all the stats about the lack of women in, upper level positions within organizations. I saw a Wall Street Journal article the other day that was kind of summarizing some academic research showing that we've actually made better progress at upper echelons of organizations, but still are really flat or plateaued in terms of helping women be successful in managerial roles. And so for me, a lot of the things that we're kind of articulating needs to get done in the academic literature, I think can really move the needle and contribute in a meaningful way towards helping women to be more successful. And then some of that involves kind of looking at how organizations are structured. Some of it involves so kind of macro level factors, policies, but then also some of it looks at kind of soft skills and having these types of conversations in workplaces with both men and women. Because a lot of times the training is targeted just at women. And so a lot of the research that we're doing, we just finished up a prospective meta-analysis on charisma, and we were looking, for instance, at are the things that we're teaching our students, are they working equally well for men and women? Because we want to make sure that we're teaching these skills that are going to work well for everybody.
What's the finding?
Null results, which is a good thing, right? So the
Okay.
charisma's working, but and then when you do gender differences, you're getting null results, which is what we're hoping to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
I,
it's a tricky research question. Normally we shy away from null results, but in this instance, you want to find that there's no differences.
yeah, yeah. So can I ask you when you mentioned yeah, well, let's talk about charisma. So how do you teach that concept? Like, like teaching modality. Do you lecture? Is there a reading that you like to use? Is there an exercise you like using?
We use a mixture. So, it depends on if we're teaching undergrad or MBA or PhD or faculty, for instance. With the undergrads, we've had them write speeches, and then we have scored those speeches for charisma. And then we have them revise the speeches, and then we have them upload those speeches into virtual reality headsets and to practice delivering those. So with the undergrads, we do that. With like the MBA students, we might do something like where we have them do some readings, we have them watch a formal lecture, we have them watch real world leaders, then we have them work in groups where they write speeches together, and then we also have them do actual speeches where they deliver it and they record it and they get feedback, and they record another speech and they get feedback, and then we put them into like real world project teams related to the university strategic plan and tell them to work on the strategic plan. But at the same, and they actually generate a report that we're going to compile to share with university leadership. But while they're doing that, to use their charisma in those meetings, we record the meetings, we give them feedback on how they did, quantitative, qualitative feedback, that kind of thing. So kind of hitting different types of kind of that flip classroom type of approach to the MBA students, And so that training, for instance, takes like about 2 weeks. And then for some of the other sessions, like if we do like exec ed or DBA, it's just kind of like a one-off 90-minute session. And so we still have some practical applications in there, and there's some lecture and discussion and things like that.
That's awesome. I think I think I'm gonna be able to guess what the answer to this is, but you said you score. What do you use as a rubric?
So there's the traditional hand coding, which is time consuming, and then the other approach is artificial intelligence, AI.
Okay.
So historically, we'd send it to like John Antonikis, for instance, who's got him and his colleagues developed AI to do this, but now we have our own AI, which is really nice. So you have like GPT-4 or Llama 3, which could be used to do these kind of Bayesian classification tasks. So the AI does really well with some types of charismatic leadership tactics and maybe struggles a bit more with others. But for instance, if you use a metaphor or simile, like the AI is pretty good at doing that kind of Bayesian classification task. So we could hypothetically take our meeting transcript from today and run it through, the AI and have the AI score me on how charismatic I was like during the interview.
Wow. Wow.
So,
That's interesting. So you mentioned the Antonakis. So do you use like his coding scheme from those papers?
yeah, so he and his colleagues have introduced a taxonomy of about I want to say 9 verbal charismatic leadership tactics. We've expanded on that with ethical leadership, transformational leadership, destructive leadership, and are working like so longer term, like you could take this meeting transcript and imagine scoring my behavior for like 33 different types of like verbal behavioral statements, including destructive, which is interesting because I might make a statement which is you know because I'm department chair, I'm like the king of the castle, right? And so that would show up as a charismatic leadership tactic because I use the simile, but it would also show up as a destructive leader behavior because it's self praise, basically in the form of narcissism. And so we as the researchers are the ones that are saying, oh, this is charisma, this is destructive. The AI is not thinking like that. The AI is saying, George used a simile and he used self praise. You, the researcher, are viewing this as narcissistic and charisma, right? And it's
Wow.
interesting because those are, charisma is typically a positively valenced construct, and destructive is obviously negatively valenced. But you could see how they could co-occur if you kind of use that type of behavioral approach.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. Well, I've used that Antonakis um, uh, set of charismatic activities, but nothing like what you're doing. This is fascinating.
The virtual reality stuff, the students love, because you also with that, like if you use it's virtual speech, the app, you get feedback on their speaking cadence, like if they're speaking too fast, too slow. They get feedback on the use of filler words, likes, ahs. They get feedback on like how well they're doing making eye contact with the full room. There's like 5 or 6 kind of key metrics that they get. And they can upload their PowerPoints from their class presentations to practice. So right now we've got 10 headsets, so we do it primarily with smaller groups like the honor students, but longer term we want to give all the students chances to use it. But it's kind of nice because again they're getting behavioral feedback for kind of verbal, nonverbal behaviors they're engaging in.
Interesting. Wow. Are you gonna like publish anything, disseminate this in some way at some point?
At some point, we're working on right now developing this for leaders in virtual meetings. The virtual reality headset stuff, I mean, like I could imagine us doing a paper off of it, but I'm just more interested in rolling it out because it's ready for the students to use right now.
Yeah.
At some point, yeah, maybe we'll do something for like Academy of Management, Learning and Education or something.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. Thanks for that. The title for this question is myth, and I've crafted a run up to it. Sometimes there are disconnects between the science and practice of leadership. fads catch on and become popular, even though they're not well supported by research. Is there one such management practice that sticks out for you when I mention this notion of myths out there? Something, maybe think about it this way, something that's more popular than maybe it should be, given what evidence we have available.
I think one that people oftentimes kind of latch onto, and this, I mean, for me, this isn't a new myth. Like I think Tim Judge and others have published on this, but it's this idea that the extroverted individual makes for a great leader.
Ah,
And I think the research that we've seen is that yes, odd, extroversion, like if you talk a lot during a meeting, you're likely to emerge as a leader, right? But there just isn't evidence that that necessarily is that necessarily results in effective leadership, right? So an introverted person could speak more during a meeting, and I that is associated with leader emergence, and there's robust evidence to support that, but there's not necessarily evidence to support that leads to effective leadership.
yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's exactly the kind of thing I wanted to hear about.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, if you were to identify one big thing that you would want students to come away from a class with you, what what would that one big takeaway be?
This is the kind of your when you say students, you mean kind of a typical undergraduate student?
Yeah, yeah, or MBAs, either.
Surveys. I don't know if this is too superficial or too high, too abstract, but I mean, my general sense is like I think everyone can be an effective leader. Leadership for me is something that takes practice, right? It's like anything else you do in your life. If you want to be a better musician or an athlete, you've got to practice it. And I think people that are very good, whether it's at public speaking or running a meeting or communicating a vision to others, it's something that, you know, yeah, there's sure some people are maybe more naturally good at it, but like any other activity, we all get better with practice. And so, particularly for students that are in earlier career stages, I do think the more that you kind of get yourself repetitions, getting into leadership, enacting leadership behaviors, the better you're going to be at being a leader. And so that's one of the things that we're seeing in the leadership literature is we're starting to study people who just because they don't have the job title of leader like boss doesn't mean they can't lead and have social influence in a positive way. And I think that's what's really exciting is you and I might be working on a team. I might have the kind of the supervisor title, but you can influence me, right, with the way in which you're enacting and inspiring me as the leader. And so I think from a student perspective, to be an effective leader, and you don't have to be a leader all the time, right? There may be some instances where you emerge as a leader because you're motivated, you're inspired, you've got a great idea, and other times that you're happy to kind of step back and let someone else take that leadership role. It's not an identity that we have to carry around with us all the time, right? But I think we can all be effective leaders, and it's something that we can do over time with practice.
Yeah, I like that. Would that would would that change at all if I asked you to focus on like MBAs and up? Do you find that they also have that same, I don't know, that some students have that hesitancy and that you would want them to all come away with this idea, hey, you can just get better at it, you just gotta try. Or would the takeaway be something different with students who've had managerial experience?
I would say it's also true for MBAs, but it looks different, right? Because if an MBA, you've maybe been in a leadership role already, but I still look at it as, there's always room for improvement, right? You can always self-reflect and say, how can I be better at a leader, even though I've been in a leadership role before, right? I'll give you an anecdote. So I just did a triathlon on Sunday and I set a personal record. I was really excited about it. It was my second one, so I wasn't new at it. But now, after having done the race, I look back at it and I say, I could do even better, right? I could do better at the swim. I could do better at the bike. I could do better at the run. And I could practice more and I could kind of self reflect. So the MBA students, I think, are kind of in that type of situation where you've done it before, right? But you can still reflect and say, okay, I know that I'm like a leader. I know that I'm a triathlete, but I can still reflect back on how I've performed in that role and recognize that there's still room for improvement.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. That's the questions I had for you.
Awesome. Well, I enjoyed chatting with you, and if nothing else, making the connection.
Yeah. Well, thank you, George. I really appreciate this. And if at some point in the future I can somehow do you a favor, I doubt I could, but if I can, please reach out.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you, Bennett.
Okay. Thank you. Take
Have a good
care.
one. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks again for listening. This podcast is presented by the Max M. Fisher College of Business at The Ohio State University. For more episodes, find us on Apple, Google, or podcast.osu.edu/leadership initiative. See you next time.